Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the premiere of Life on the Grid, hosted by Kobe Lambeth and Joe Samaniego. Today our special guest, Brett Winningham from Speedway Digest, our musical performer, short blonde singer Sarah Brown. All that and more right here on Life on the Grid.
And here's a beautiful look at the uptown Charlotte skyline from the WBTV webcam. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the premiere of Life on the Grid. My name is Kobe Lambert from the podiumfinish.net, and here with me is Joe Samaniego. How are you doing today, Joe, and how was your trip up to Alaska?
I'm doing well. Trip to Alaska was pretty good. Good to see family. A little bit crazy with this pandemic, but overall it's a good trip, and especially mainly see family and good friends up there.
Yeah, and I understand that you used to work at Alaska Raceway Park. I know you've posted several photos on your personal Twitter account, saved as your pinned tweet. It seems like you had a wonderful time working up there. I've seen additional photos of the track, and the scenery is absolutely gorgeous. And it seems like a beautiful, peaceful place to appreciate nature at its finest. And why do you decide to return to your home track?
Wanted to go up. It's amazing place, Alaska. I mean, as you mentioned, the scenery there, it's something that can't be beat. A lot of folks here in Oregon call Oregon Alaska Light. Racing up there, I've been very lucky, privileged to race. I've done stock cars up in Fairbanks Mitchell Raceway, which is a dirt track, Capitol Speedway in Willow, and then Alaska Raceway Park. That was the first place that gave me the opportunity to do announcing. From the announcing, then I did televised interviews, especially for the Facebook page, social media, and I had the very privilege, I guess you could say, honor to interview some of the NASCAR drivers. We had Jordan Anderson come up last year from the Truck Series. He raced in the late models. I got to interview him. Ken Schrader. We saw Perry Petrino, who was with the NASCAR Driver Diversity program, come up. The beauty of the racetrack area is right next to the mountain. Pioneer Peak is right there at the end of the drag strip. Alaska Raceway Park is a NASCAR home track NHRA drag strip. So it's really a unique place, and I'm just really grateful for the family up there that runs the track to give me the opportunity. That has led to essentially me being here now with the Grid.
Yeah, that's really cool, Joe. I remember, as you mentioned, Jordan Anderson went up there and raced a late model, and I believe Jordan Anderson actually won that race. Correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, and I actually remember that night because I saw it on my Twitter timeline, and I was like, holy cow, Jordan Anderson won a late model racing, and Kyle Busch can't say anything about him there because Jordan Anderson is a winner of a late model race, and with you being a native of Alaska and now living in Portland, Oregon. I've never actually lived anywhere else outside of North Carolina. I always say that I will never want to leave my home state, or I'll feel homesick. And I cannot imagine living anywhere else but the Great Tar Heel State. Do you ever find yourself feeling homesick, thinking about the good times of living in Alaska?
I do at times feel homesick. I know Alaska, I was born and raised there. I went to college there at Fairbanks, which is interior Alaska, for a while. Then I went to University of South Carolina, somewhere very different. That's how I got into the Southeast and really loved the area. And overall, I do enjoy Oregon. There's a lot of great things here. One of the big things, of course, closer to racing. Unfortunately, earlier this week, we know that Portland International Raceway, their IndyCar race is canceled for the year, but looking forward to next year. They said they're going to be working on that. But yeah, overall, Alaska, it's a fun place. I would say there's times where there are days where it's like, man, I miss this place in Alaska. You can't find that in Alaska. And especially my full-time job in Alaska, I was traveling to all the villages out there. So taking a small plane, a ferry boat, advising local governments, tribal governments, it was a lot of fun. And it was always an adventure. And I've been as far west in the United States, the furthest west city, Atka, Alaska. I've been all the way to the Arctic Ocean. A lot of adventure there. And for anybody to think about going to Alaska, definitely check it out. And definitely check out Alaska Raceway Park. Tell them Joe said hi there to everyone at Alaska Raceway Park.
Yeah, Alaska definitely sounds like a wonderful state. I'd like to visit Alaska someday, and I know this might shock a lot of people, but I've actually never been outside of the Eastern Standard Time Zone before. I think the furthest west I've been is like the Buffalo, New York, Toronto area. That's like the furthest west I've ever gone. I'm still in the Eastern Standard Time Zone. You have never been in Central, Mountain, or Pacific time. It would definitely be. I definitely want to see the other side of the country someday, and maybe someday, Joe, if you're available, I might decide to visit Alaska, and I'll definitely let you know. And while we're on the subject of discussing U.S. states, I feel like it's finally time to introduce our first guest on Life on the Grid. He's from the Show Me state of Missouri, a journalist at Speedway Digest, and a true timing and rulebook junkie. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Brett Winningham.
Hello.
Hey Brett, we're so excited to have you join our brand new program here as our first ever guest. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad to be here, and just hearing you all talk about Alaska and the West Coast, that's pretty awesome. I'd love to go out there myself.
Yes, I'm sure it would definitely be a fun time to see Alaska, especially going to the racetrack, Alaska Raceway Park. I mean, for me personally, I don't really like want to travel places unless there's a racetrack involved. And Alaska Raceway Park is definitely a great excuse to come up with a trip to visit a brand new state. And for starters, how were you introduced to motorsports, and how did you discover your passion for it?
Well, it's very interesting. I've been involved with sports for a long time. I played baseball as a kid. I was always watched baseball on TV. And really my love for racing didn't really start until around 2005 ish. My dad bought tickets to Talladega in 2004, and Jeff Gordon won that race, and that was my first race. And ever since then, I just followed it every once in a while. And then around 2005, I discovered, there was probably about a 6 month period where, man, I keep seeing this commercial for NASCAR.com on TV, and for like 6 months straight, I was like, next time I'm going to compare, I'll go NASCAR.com. And then, it's like one of those things where, you say you're going to do it, and then you're like, get distracted, and then you start, you know, doing other things, and then it's like, oh yeah, I want to go on NASCAR.com. And the same thing happened over like 6 month period until I finally did it. And I discovered this thing on NASCAR.com where you could actually track each car on the live leaderboard like during the race. And ever since I discovered that, I would actually watch the entire race. Before that, I'd watch like the first 10, 15 laps or whatnot, and then I'd go play, and then I would time it just right where I'd get back and watch the last 15 laps or so of a race until I discovered this. And then, it just evolved from there. My high school year, growing up, I've always wanted to have a job that not everyone has, whether that's a Major League Baseball player, whether that's, some job in sports, whether that be a team member on a NASCAR team, a crew chief, whatnot like that. And so, I just wanted to have one of those jobs. And at first, I wanted to be a crew chief or a team member, and I would miss school on the races that were postponed, obviously, like all the kids like to do these days or did in the past. And I would sit there with the notebook, and I would pay attention to things on timing or whatnot like that, and find things that, what the job of a crew chief would be, how the car's running and stuff like that. And I would do this. And unfortunately, when I took auto mechanics in high school, I learned that I was not knowledgeable in cars. And so I knew that wouldn't work out. So then I got into journalism.
And it's funny you mentioned that last part because when I first came to UNC Charlotte, I thought I was going to be a mechanical engineer and work on race cars, and then I was like, all this math and science is not for me. So
Yeah.
and I was like, yeah, maybe this would be fun, but I think I'm gonna focus on journalism. And yeah, it was definitely an interesting story listening to how your love for racing started in 2005 and mine started 2 years later in 2007, and you went from being a young passionate motorsports fan into the motorsports journalist that you are today with Speedway Digest, and you've been doing an excellent job providing useful information to all the race fans. And it's perfectly clear that you have a deep passion for the motorsports journalism industry. You cover the three NASCAR National Series, the NTT IndyCar Series, and I've noticed your deep commitment to covering the NASCAR regional series such as ARCA and the Modified Tour. And when live tweeting races in the regional series, you don't typically see as many journalists actively discussing these races in comparison to races in the NASCAR National Series. However, your name always pops up on my timeline when there's an ARCA or modified tour race happening. You do a fantastic job covering all motorsports that you follow, but it seems like you just turn up the wick when it comes to the regional series. So why is it just as important to cover the NASCAR roots portion of the sport?
Well, I think first and foremost, it comes from loving motorsports, right? More content, the better. And, unfortunately, there's not much coverage out there for the Arkham and R series or the Will Modified Tour or whatnot like that. So, to provide it, I think there's an audience for it. And certainly, over the last 10 years or so, or used to, those races I think used to be on TV, but then they kind of drifted away from being shown on a tape delay like a week later or so. So, there's definitely a more of an audience today, I think, with the new package deal streaming with NBC Sports and all that they do. And so, obviously I couldn't do it without them, and all credit definitely goes to them. But it's just great to see NASCAR beginning to promote those series. I don't think they did a very good job with that, but they're starting to get better with it, and I think there's a following there. And not everyone can watch those races. Everyone's busy. Unfortunately, not a lot of people like to cover them because, they're just focused on the top three national series. NASCAR is bigger than just that top three national series. There's fans out there who want to know the up and comers of who's going to be coming into the sport, and they want to start following those drivers, and it just goes both ways. It also helps out those drivers down there in the lower ranks to get themselves out there. And it's not our job to do PR, but it definitely goes both ways.
Yeah, definitely. I believe you. I believe you definitely hit the nail right on the coffin there because it's important to cover the NASCAR roots portion of the sport, as you mentioned. If people need to know who are the up and comers as well, and also the lifers. The lifers in the series, the ones who are going to like race at that level their entire career. And it seems like a lot of people have shifted their thoughts towards that these series are just development series for younger drivers, and that's not always the case. Some drivers make their home in the Arkham and Art series or the Modified Tour, and just because a driver doesn't move up from that series, that doesn't mean that they're a bad driver or they don't have talent. Some drivers just stop at a certain level, and that's where we see them. Kind of like in the NASCAR Gander RV and Outdoors Truck Series. You see Matt Crafton and Johnny Sauter, who have seemed to found a home in the truck series and all of that. And for anyone looking to get into motorsports journalism, can you explain why covering those particular events on the NASCAR roots level can help get your name out there versus covering a NASCAR Cup race that has way more journalists covering it?
Well, I think, you just touched on it there at the end. Everyone's covering the national series, whereas no one's really doing much for a lower series. I think it's just as important now. Granted, I'm saying this, and I started out with the top three national series, but then again, you know, I think I had a different dynamic where today those races are available to cover live, whereas when I was coming through the ranks in 2011, I'm making myself sound old here, but when I started getting into it in 2011, 2012, you know, you didn't have that. So, you know, I think, you know, with today's dynamic, you know, it's same as the drivers coming up or, you know, team members wanting to be in a sport. You know, you gotta start low, you know, it sucks. But, you know, if you wanna be up here with us, you know, you have to start somewhere and I recommend the lower series definitely. You know, I think, you know, as you mentioned earlier, that there's not many people who cover it, and you know, there's coverage there. There's value to be covering those races, and you know, just start low and work your way up. Whether that's covering those series or starting a podcast. You know, I started podcasts. That's where you know, I got started in this and was introduced in this. So you know, it's different for everyone, but you know, definitely start out with the lower series, and also too, you know, you're not gonna get paid right away when you get up here. You know, it's gonna be all freelance for a while, and that's okay. But yeah, you know, definitely I recommend starting it with the lower series and working your way up. So.
Yeah, and you brought a good point there. How making it in the motorsports industry is definitely not easy at all. As you mentioned, freelance work is definitely going to become your drinking word
Yeah.
for a long time, or well, not necessarily a long time. It varies, from situation to situation, but but be prepared to work for free and make a ton of sacrifices because if you put in the work and just keep believing in yourself, everything's gonna work out right in the end. And when we're talking about covering some of the series like ARCA East or ARCA West or the ARCA National Series, if that's what they want to call it, ARCA Menard Series. So NBC has Track Pass now on NBC Sports Gold, and for those young motorsports journalists out there who can't for one reason or the other, make it to the track in person to be in the media center there, they still have access to all of that on Track Pass. You have access to all the ARCA races, modified tour, and all of that, and it seems like with all of this technology at our fingertips, you don't necessarily have to be at the track every week to cover a race. You can definitely cover the race from your own home, just like me and you do every race weekend. It's yes, yes, definitely doable. I understand that some of the more experienced media members who have been around for a while, they don't really appreciate the fact that when people aren't at the track weekly, they're entitled to their opinion, and that's okay. But for everyone's situation is different, and you've definitely proven, Brett, that that you can cover most of the races at home, especially your at home media center, which is pretty cool. We'll get into that later in the show. That you can still be a successful motorsports journalist, and you've definitely done such a fantastic job.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so far, I've been grilling you with all the tough questions so far, and I think Joe has been dying to get into the conversation too. Joe, what do you want to know about Brett?
Well, definitely, you all having a great time. Now you really enjoyed learning more about Brett during the conversation. Really, one of the things I know outside motorsports, we all have our personal stories of like where we came from and all that. One of the things I can't help but notice, looks like you had a Seattle Seahawks T-shirt on today. Can you tell us a little bit about your fandom of Seattle? And it seems like at least the Seahawks are a fan of like also the other Seattle area teams.
Yeah, so I I don't just enjoy racing. I like to follow different sports and stuff like that, and so pretty much the Royals are the only team that I'm really a fan of baseball wise. However, I do love the Mariners. So, but yeah. So I enjoy all kinds of sports. I used to, before I became a NASCAR journalist, I actually collected race used sheet metal. I don't anymore for obvious reasons because I'm a journalist, but one of the things I do collect is game used Major League Baseball memorabilia. Whenever I go to Royals games, I like to buy a game used ball or a game used lineup card or whatnot like that. So, yeah, I'm definitely huge in baseball and football and all those other sports. And, I'm sure it's coming because, Joe, you asked me about Seattle sports and stuff, but, I'm really excited for the NHL team that's coming to Seattle with the Seattle Kraken. So that's going to be really cool. But yeah, I love football, baseball, basketball. Hopefully Seattle can get an NBA team next. But yeah, I don't just enjoy racing, but I also like baseball. I actually played baseball when I was a kid. So, but yeah, I love all sorts of sports.
That's really cool. I know growing up for me, it's always been car racing, a little bit of hockey, especially great state of Alaska. Hockey is a big thing. And yeah, definitely got to be excited to hear about that new hockey team Seattle's getting. One question, I know you're from the Missouri area. Do you follow the St. Louis Blues, and were you thrilled about them winning the Stanley Cup this past year?
Well, I never watched hockey before. I'm not really
Oh,
into
wow.
it yet. So yeah, I have a lot to learn. Actually, it's funny that you asked me that because someone the other day tweeted to me on my account and asked me about if I knew or mentioned a player or whatnot for Red Wings. I tweeted back to him. I'm like, I'm not sure what you're talking about. So yeah, I never really been into hockey. Maybe if Kansas City had a team, I'd be interested. Same with NBA. Well, on the NBA part, I'm a fan of the Sacramento Kings, but I'm just kind of a fan of theirs until Seattle gets a team, hopefully. But yeah, I'm not really much into hockey, but I know though that St. Louis is a great sports town. I've been there to cover the NASCAR Gander RV Outdoor Truck Series races there. So yeah, it's a fantastic sports town. Being a Royals fan, I'm not really a fan of the Cardinals, but yeah, that was really cool to see the Blues bring a Stanley Cup to St. Louis last year, I watched parts, bits and pieces of it, but not like really in depth. So
I hear, and that's interesting. The Sacramento Kings, I got a lot of family in the Sacramento area, and I still remember when they had Chris Webber, they were in the playoffs against the Lakers. That was some of the best basketball I ever seen. Big heartbreak, but that's just the way it goes. And you bring up about the Seattle basketball team. What do you think about the idea of them getting a basketball team someday in the future? And should it be something like a reincarnation of the Seattle Supersonics again, or something more creative to more fit the city, especially since now we're having another sea theme with we got the Kraken, we got the NFL Seahawks. Seems like we're going with a lot of marine type mascots.
yeah, I think I don't know. I'd have to think about that because despite being a fan of Seattle, I don't really have a right to really say I feel like since I'm not from Seattle, I've never actually been there. But what's funny is I know pretty much all the politicians up there, and I know like I know like the mayor, but I don't know the mayor of my own city here in Missouri. But yeah, I think I would love to see them bring the Seattle Supersonics name back, or just the Sonics. Either one's fine, or something unique. I don't know, but it'd be really cool just to get them back.
It'll be really cool to see them come back. I know Seattle, a lot of times being from Alaska, everybody, oh, you're from Alaska. You must like the Seattle Mariners, the Seattle Seahawks, because they're the closest professional sports teams that we have. But yeah, that's really cool. Now, I know one of the things besides, what you do with Speedway Digest, you also are very involved, especially with the church you're part of and their social media efforts. Can you go into some details about the job you do, especially with the church social media as well?
Yeah, so I'm a social media coordinator for a local church here called Church for Imperfect People, or CHIPS for short. And, it's something I got into 2 years, almost 2 years ago now. And, it's just a great environment. It allows me to, we talk about journalism all the time on here, right? And, allows me to get into the PR side of things instead of the journalism side. Journalism and PR go hand in hand, but they're complete opposite. Whereas a journalist, you're trying to get scoops. You're trying to get around the PR side of it to find out, what's going on so you can get ahead of it. Whereas PR, you're controlling when things reach public. And so I think to be a good journalist, you have to understand the PR side of it. And, I really love the PR side because, I don't have to I don't have to try finding things out in the background. I just know them and I can control when they go public. So, that's really cool. And I get to do a lot of cool things with that. I actually run their live stream. So live production, I'm getting into that. I get to set the notes in the app, in our church app, every week. I'm the guy who sends out the bulletin, and my job is to bring 4-5 different ministries I think we offer into one in our online presence and in our public presence. I also, my job is to make graphics that you see on our Facebook page, and just make those. I get to do a lot of cool stuff that I don't get to as a journalist, and it's just really fun, and it's a great environment, and I just enjoy it. It keeps me accountable and keeps me busy. So
That's really cool, especially since you really enjoy it. It's like a hobby and you're using skills like graphic designs, live production. That's really exciting, really cool here. I know we always appreciate everything you do on Twitter. You do great racing coverage of everything going on. And then, based on everything Kobe has told me, your dedication and passion doesn't just apply to at the workplace, but helping others out as well too. And I know you've known Kobe for quite some time, and helping him out as a journalist, and then also just having a good friendship with him and then other journalists as well. Why do you choose to help others in the media members like Kobe trying to make a name for themselves and their spirits when sometimes people will be questioning new people and their abilities of can you really follow the sport? Seems like you're always there as a almost like a mentor for so many.
well, I think it's important, number one, that I care. I was there, you know, coming up through the ranks. Um, I care and I want things right. I might get hate for this, but I just care that it gets right. And we can do, we can do fine probably all by ourselves, but we're better when we're together. We're better when we can go to people, bounce ideas off of each other. We're better than just one, and I just really care that things are done right. I try and give back to where I was at one point, and just giving back, and I think that's something that church has taught me as well, that we kind of talked about earlier, is to give back. And sure, I could keep it all myself, and there's things that I keep to myself and I don't share. Every once in a while I'll get a scoop on this or that, and I won't share it. But other than that, we're just better when you have individuals coming together, whereas we see each other like enemies, and so we just I just care.
That's really, really good to hear. I know, especially a lot of times people will see each other as competition. And I think you bring out really good points about bouncing ideas back and forth and working together. I mean, if Racing has some of the best media journalists, they will do a great job sharing their passion. I think that's really inspiring of what you just said. And definitely, I know, appreciate everything you do. And then with everything as well, too, it's like a lot of folks, I think, I really appreciate everything you do and the friendship that you offer to so many folks.
And I just want to add, one of my things that I live by, and that I actually live probably about a year now, a little over a year, probably the last 15, 16 months or so, is that I live by faith or fear. We have two choices. We got faith or we have fear. You can choose fear and stay where you're at and guarantee it you're going to stay there and not advance forward. Or you can choose faith and possibly advance forward. But every time that I chose faith, even if I don't reach that goal, I still come out stronger and better for it, and a better person because of it. And it's just all about choosing faith or fear. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and Brad, you've definitely had a positive impact on my life, both professionally and personally. And I honestly can't thank you enough for everything.
Yeah, you're absolutely welcome.
Yeah, and when I had limited resources for my motorsports coverage, I remember the day you reached out to me and offered your assistance, and the resources you provided helped out my career tremendously. And you didn't have to do that and help me out, but you did. As Joe mentioned, a lot of people in this field is like like it's like quote unquote competition, and it's like I'm your competitor and all of that, but you decided, as you mentioned, you wanted to give back because once you were in my shoes, and you decided, be like, hey, somebody was there for me and helped me out, so I'm going to repay the favor because I used to be in his shoes, and for that I'll always be grateful. And someday I want to pay it forward and help other young individuals seeking a career in motorsports as well. Yeah, when someone helps you, I think it's a good idea to help out someone else and keep the chain of positivity and kindness moving. Would you agree?
I agree. And another thing I want to add here, one of the things I do when I go to racetracks is I do a thing where after a race, and I have permission from NASCAR to do this, but after a race, I go down to pit road and I pick up lug nuts. And what I do with them is when I go to the tracks, I'll give them to kids. And as I mentioned earlier, I do it because I care. It's up to us in the industry to keep this going for the next generation. It's up to us to give back to the fans. And so I do that lug nut thing with the kids, and I always try and make a smile on their face when I hand them one, and they always appreciate them when I do. So it's I just enjoy giving back, and yeah, so.
Yeah, wow. I actually did not know that. And here, you picking up lug nuts and giving it to kids when you go to the track. That's definitely such a nice gesture, and I'm sure that's a memory that they'll cherish forever. You're giving back to the next generation of NASCAR fans right there, and I'm really glad to hear that although you're a true professional, motorsports journalist doing what you're supposed to be doing, in the in that role, but at the same time you're still caring and compassionate, and you're trying to make others happy as well. And several months ago, I believe it might have been November 2019, I was having a really tough time in my personal life, and to be honest, I can't even remember what was bothering me during that time. But but I do know that I was really struggling and having a hard time. And then out of the blue, I received a text from you, and look, and little did I know the words you shared with me would stick with me to this very day, and
Oh,
I plan to refer to them for the rest of my life. And and as you mentioned earlier in the show, you truly taught me the meaning of faith or fear. And whenever I'm forced to make a tough decision in life, or feeling down in the dumps about something, I now ask myself, am I going to choose faith or fear? I refuse to let fear win in those situations. I'm going to, just stare my problems directly in the face and have faith that everything will work out for the best in the end. And Brett, I'm sure you've had a positive impact on many lives besides mine. The message faith or fear has changed my life forever. And how does it make you feel knowing that you've touched my life in so many ways by simply sharing a message consisting of those three words, faith or fear?
that's wow. I'm sorry. I'm kind of taken back. I'm kind of speechless after hearing that. But it's all him. It's all him. As you know. So I'm just really glad to hear that. And my pastor actually taught me that. That's one of the things that I've learned from church, and it's helped me along the way. And one of the things that a lot of people don't know about me is that I'm into tattoos, and so I actually got my first one in December, which is my life verse on the inside of my left wrist, but my next one is going to go on the inside of my right wrist, and it's going to be faith or fear. So it's definitely something that's been a huge part of my last 15, 16 months, and I just put it all into God and just keep pushing.
Amen, right there, brother. Amen. And I'm just, I was just like blown away because because like I'd never, heard that before, faith or fear before you mentioned that to me when I was, going through that tough time. And when you explained to me like what it meant, it, it like I was just like thinking about it, and then I started thinking about it more and more until it finally resonated with me. And I'm like, why haven't I heard this before? I'm like, faith or fear. It's just three words. It's so simple. And in a lot of situations, I always chose fear and never move forward. And when I started putting faith over fear, that's when a lot of things in my life, you know change for the better. And I definitely want to thank you for teaching me that powerful lesson. And if I'm ever in the position that you were in, and see someone else having a hard time, I'm definitely going to share with them faith or fear, because that's definitely such a powerful message.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. So
And thank you so much for sharing everything with me, and for simply being a good person to others. You don't really expect others, especially in this line of work, to be so open and down to earth. Yeah, well, right from the start at least. Yeah, Brett. So I just want you to keep being you, doing the job, keep doing the job the correct way, and inspiring others too. And next, I wanted to discuss your impressive at-home media center. Yeah, I know we've talked about this several times beforehand, and I'm still in disbelief by your awesome setup. I remember the very first time you showed it to me. I thought, wow, this guy doesn't necessarily have to go to all the media centers around the country, because he brought the media center to his own home. And luckily, you provided us a video of your setup to share with our viewers. And can you walk us through your very own personalized media center?
yeah, so I just want to say, you don't need a huge, you don't need a huge thing like this. You just need a laptop and the TV broadcast and maybe the NASCAR.com scanner. You don't need a media center, quote unquote, like that. It's just my preference. I like to see everything. I feel like that the more things I have, the more powerful I can. Yeah, so this screen right here, these are from NASCAR. Basically, I'm following the lineup order from the previous laps, and then the full lineup, and then the number of lead changes, leaders, cars that are out, all sorts of things, live points. That's what that screen is. And then we have, your typical leaderboard. And then you see on my laptop right down there in the right-hand corner, that is for to listen to a scanner. As you can see, I have 2 tabs open where I can hear officials all the time, no matter what. And then I have a driver that can scan around throughout, kind of like the fan vision. And then the next screen over here, kind of a little slow motion, I think, but we'll get to it in a second. So as we go to the right, there's the TV with the broadcast, and then there's another live leaderboard where it just has the time behind the leader, and then it shows out or whatnot like that. So yeah, NASCAR has done a great job of providing media with resources. It wasn't nearly as good as it was beforehand, but thankfully NASCAR allows us to use these resources. And as you notice, if you've ever been in a media center, that's the same timing that is shown in the media center. So, it just all helps come together. But what's funny is those applications are actually ahead of the TV broadcast. So the broadcast a little bit behind, which kind of makes things interesting sometimes. But, we get through it. And, and the more resources I have, the more power I can push things out, and I can see more angles. And you couldn't hear the audio in that clip, but for events that I'm able to, I have the Sirius XM radio playing over TV because I feel like everyone has access to the Fox or what is being said on NBC. Whereas if I have the radio over the broadcast, I can maybe hear other things that the TV isn't talking about, and I can provide a little bit different angle of the race than I can if I was listening to a TV broadcast, which unfortunately I had to not necessarily cancel, but suspend. That's a better word for it. My SiriusXM subscription since the whole COVID thing right now. But when I have that available, I choose the radio broadcast over the TV audio.
Wow, such a unique setup. Every time I see it, I'm absolutely blown away. Because, yeah, like you said, when you have more resources, you can do a lot more, and you definitely have your very own media center sitting right in your home, so you don't necessarily have to fly to Daytona, you don't have to fly to Charlotte, Martinsville, Bristol, all of that. You have everything right there that you would normally have in a regular media center, only in the comforts of your own home. And I want to thank you for showing the world how you make the most of everything as a motorsports journalist.
Also, one of the things I forgot to mention too is I actually have a device that I broadcast to radios all throughout my house. So the radio broadcast, so I think it's 88.5 or 6, where I can turn any radio to that frequency, FM frequency, in my house, and I'll have the race broadcast on it, which is really neat. Basically my own public address as well. So, but yeah, and I wish I could be at every track. I don't recommend, using this as a replacement, but as an enhancement when at home. But, because if I could, I would choose at the track every week instead of doing it this way all the time.
Oh yeah, definitely. I would choose at the track too. Definitely. Yeah, I think every motorsports journalist out there would rather be at the track than sitting at home. But you definitely do a great job with your media center at home. Yeah, so while it will never replace the real media center at the racetrack, is definitely a great resource for you to have because you do an excellent job of your motorsports coverage coming from the Brett Winningham Media Center.
Yeah, that's my typical. Oh man, my mind just went blank. But my typical nickname is Bretterly, and I haven't heard it from that angle, so kind of threw me off there.
Well, okay, Bretterly. In a way, in a way, you kind of remind me of a young Bob Pockris because you are very knowledgeable about the rules of the sport. You keep a close eye on timing and scoring, and simply by being a true professional, each motorsports journalist has their own style, and you certainly have yours as well. Is there any particular motorsports journalist that you look up to?
Bob Pockris.
I guess I hit the nail right on the coffin, huh?
Yeah. Well, what's funny is there's a story of Matt Humphrey. If you don't know Matt,
Oh yeah, I know Matt.
he's one of the communications people at NASCAR, one of my best friends, and he actually calls me Mr. Pockris from time to time when at the racetrack. It's funny.
Yeah, and like, what is it about Bob Pockers that you just like admire as a young motorsports journalist yourself?
Well, anyone who knows or follows Bob knows that he is very professional and carries himself the way that I think everyone should look up to. He's not snarky at times. Despite all the questions, does track have lights and all that. He still responds in a pretty professional manner, and I just admire that about him. And if you knew him in person, he's just a great motivator. When at the racetrack. So is Jeff Gluck. I definitely give props to both of them. I think they're great to look up to, and I always enjoy the conversations I have with Bob and getting to talk with them and just lifting me up, as I've done for you, Kobe, and others, just lifting them up, be there for them, don't be afraid to, answer questions from aspiring journalists, and he's just very professional. And I think, that's, if you looked motorsports journalists up in a dictionary and sports journalists, too, Bob Pockris would be the exact definition of a true professional sports journalist. And, there's times where, we're all snarky and, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about as well, Kobe, but, despite those snarky moments, he still chooses professionalism. And I just admire the guy for that.
Yeah, definitely. I actually have an experience of meeting Bob. I believe it was 2 years ago at the Charlotte Roval. I believe it might have been an hour before Green Flag. We were at we were at Jeff Gluck's Tweet Up. Got to meet him as well for the first time, and Bob actually spent 10 minutes and like he pulled me aside and we actually had a good conversation. And the thing that really blew me away is like when he asked where I was from, I said Reidsville, North Carolina, and most people have never heard of that. I said, I'm from Reidsville, Bob. He said, wow, Reidsville, I've heard of that place. And I'm like, oh my gosh, Bob Pockers actually knows my hometown. So I thought that was definitely pretty cool. Met Bob. Bob was really down to earth and nice. He didn't seem like beforehand. That was my first time actually been around some of the top motorsports journalists in the sport, and I will admit I was a little starstruck as well. Stand like I was like I'm actually having a conversation with Bob Pockers right now, the Bob Pockers, and then also as well, Jeff Gluck as well. Yes, and actually this past year, I actually walked back, towards the media center with Jeff Gluck and Aaron Bearden and all of them, and it's just a cool experience, been a young person trying to make a name for yourself, and then it's like, wow, I'm right here in the on the same field as these top motorsports journalists who have already made their name in the sport, and it's just such an honor to be in the same presence as the likes of Bob Pockers and Jeff Gluck. They were definitely true professionals. And next, I wanted to bring up Kansas Speedway, and I understand you sent out a tweet recently saying, I don't think it's been since 2011 that I've watched a race at Kansas Speedway at home on TV. I'll miss being there and seeing all you awesome people. And I understand that it might have been difficult watching all the action at Kansas last weekend. I mean, last Thursday night and all of that, and also last weekend as well. Yeah, I almost forgot we had Xfinity Truck and ARCA. It's just slipped my mind right there. And since you were unable to attend, due to the current global pandemic, first, I'm curious to know, like, when you reflect back to 2011, were you attending as a spectator then, and when was like the first year you were issued an official NASCAR media credential at the track?
So, so I think 2011, the Cup race was the last year that maybe it was 2012. No, it wasn't. It was 2011 was my last year attending as a spectator there, and no, I'm sorry, I watched the 2011 race at home, but we would always go on Friday for like the practice and stuff, but yeah, so like I think it was 2005 I went to a race there, and then 2006 we just went for practice. Same for 2007 through I think like 2010, and then we went to a race, and then I think 2011 was the last year that I actually watched on TV. And what's funny is I say that I noticed something on the TV broadcast that I didn't notice before or take into account, when I was at the track and stuff. And I guess it's because I was so busy, but I never realized how wide that track is coming off turn 2 and going down the backstretch in that general area. Like, I was kind of taken aback by that a little bit because I never just realized it was that wide and that broad of a backstretch until this past week, which was really interesting because I watched a lot of stuff from there. But yeah, it was definitely different. But going back to your question, so 2012, I went to the race and I was actually as a spectator. And so first year, no, it was actually 2013. So 2012 was actually the last race I think I watched on TV. I'm sorry. I should just keep going. But so 2013, the spring race, I went as a spectator. However, I had the fortunate opportunity of going to a tweet up as I always did, and they gave away cold passes to everyone there. The track probably took like 150 of these and just started handing them out to attenders at the tweet up. And so I was able to go into a garage area, and that was my first time ever in a NASCAR garage area. And so it was like really cool kind of see, even though I wasn't a journalist, it was just kind of neat to see the inner workings. And in 2000 and later that year in 2013 for the October race was my first year actually covering as media. So that same year, it just so happened that I think it was meant to be that I got a cold pass for that, just so I can kind of experience what being in the garage is like during pre-race and stuff like that, and getting all the access later that year in October.
Yeah, wow, that's definitely pretty cool. And I have a question for you, but I'm wondering, like, from the first time, you had a media credential till now, like, what were some of the biggest things that you've learned from the start to the present, by being at the track covering the races?
Whew, that's a heavy loaded question there, Kobe. Um, I think just being yourself, just doing your own thing. Don't worry about what others are doing. Um, helping others, I do that while I'm still at the track. Um, just being yourself and, I've been there before. So I just act like that. I've been there before, it's kind of tongue in cheek, I guess, but just doing what got you there in the first place and just continue to do that. And, I think that, when you're at the racetrack, I never get starstruck, but there's a couple moments where it's like, oh man, I really want to get this guy's autograph. Like an example was George Brett came into the media center during one of the pre-race activities, I think in 2015, and that was really fun. I almost passed out in the media chair, I think, but and just meeting awesome people. I like to say that, I love racing, but honestly, if I really thought about it, it's the people that make it happen. It's those relationships that you build at the track, getting to know people, and just doing what got you there. Just be yourself, and make friends. I know that we kind of discussed earlier that everyone views everyone as competition, but at the end of the day, we have our friends. We care for each other, just as all the drivers care for the other drivers and their fellow competitors. It's we get to do this. We get to do something unique, and we get to tell the story of the sport. If it weren't for journalism, it'd be really hard for NASCAR to be where they're at today. It's all us, and you know, just have fun with it.
Yeah, well said. I couldn't have said it better myself. And Brett, I'm sure you'll be able to cover many more racing events at Kansas Speedway and other tracks as well for many years to come when we finally end this major global health crisis. And on behalf of everyone at the Grid Network, we hope you continue to remain healthy and safe during these crazy, unprecedented times. And we are delighted to have you as our first guest for Life on the Grid.
Well, I'm truly honored, and I just can't thank you guys enough for allowing me to come on here. It's been a great time talking racing and all that. So I'm just so grateful for you all and for allowing me to come on here.
Really great having you on the program. Learn so much about you, and definitely encourage everyone to follow you. And of course, Speedway Digest. And once again, thank you, and keep in touch. Definitely, you go up to Alaska, let me know. Get you all hooked up for Alaska Raceway Park. So now we're pretty excited. We got a special guest that has agreed to be part of our program. She's out of North Carolina. She's a young upcoming musician. Really excited to have her on board the program. From North Carolina, please welcome, ladies and gentlemen, short blonde singer, Sarah Brown.
Going on a drive, speeding down 45. We're passing every sign, and I got you by my side. Light a cigarette, I can't get you off my neck. I just tell my boyfriend